I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. All right. Happy Friday, guys. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. My special guests tonight are Gina and Joey Peltier. They are community organizers and distant relatives of Native American activists and longest sitting U.S. political prisoner, Leonard Peltier. Thank you both so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. You do so much amazing, important work, and I know you're so busy, and I'm just honored that you took the time to have us in your space. Thank you so much.
Thank you much for having us. Your amazing interview yesterday with Dr. West was outstanding. I loved all of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So I want to start off discussing water protection. So I know that both of you are community organizers and activists. I want to start off with Standing Rock. For those who are not aware, this was another action. This action took place in the Dakotas. So there have been different pipelines that have been, or the government has tried to put through. Standing Rock is one of the ones that I feel did not get enough mainstream media attention. If it had not been for people like Nico House, Status Quo, I wouldn't have known that Standing Rock was even happening, to be honest with you. They covered that extensively. So shout out to them for doing that. But in reference to water protections, if we're starting off with Standing Rock, could you explain to everyone, how did this all start to begin with? And I know that they decided not to go through with it, but how did this all start out to begin with? And what was it that brought the community together to protest against it?
Yeah, I'll start if I may. So, water is life, and, there is no life without water. We all need it to survive. And so they've been putting in these fossil fuel pipelines all throughout Mother Earth for quite some time now. And, we never needed fossil fuels to begin with. We all know Henry Ford's first automobiles ran off of hemp fuel. Whole body was made of hemp steel. So we've always had other resources to use, better resources to use. But with the story of Standing Rock and No Dapple, they came in and wanted to do a replacement. And when they first initially had the plans, it was going north of the city of Minot. And so the community members of Minot said that, no, we don't want this pipeline going through our water. So put it somewhere else. So Dakota Access Pipeline, and also in partnership with Enbridge Corporation, then decided, okay, well, we'll just move it, but we'll move it where it goes above Standing Rock Reservation. So that means that, well, then, they really don't give us a say, and there shouldn't be like that much governmental pushback. And so they move forward with putting this poisonous, toxic pipeline through a very important water system for the tribe. And, if there were to be a spill, it would be really hard for them to get accountability on that. Joey, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I know it's been a long day for you, sister, but that was actually Bismarck.
Okay.
Yep.
Bismarck.
And Bismarck was able to have the environmental impact statement through NEPTA, which is the National Environmental Protection Act. And what that allowed was the community to have a discussion on if this project gets to be put through Bismarck or not. And that's part of the process with NEPTA itself. And through their process, they got to vote and say, no, we're not going to have this pipeline through Bismarck. And then, as Gina finished out, the pipeline company, Dakota Access Pipeline, along with the shareholders, decided to put it through indigenous land, as we've been historically an easier target for these extractive industries and these toxic environmental harm. Through NEPTA, although our findings through the tribe of Standing Rock, through their environmental impact statement, it wasn't able to be allowed in court. And then I know that Standing Rock also fought legal battles through treaties that were superseded by the Clean Waters Act, gifting the waterways of America to the National Guard. And that's who got in on that, was the National Engineering. Well, excuse me. But yeah, that hammered in through Standing Rock. Do you think I covered? We had a 10-year battle with that. Within 2012, Obama came into Standing Rock. Correct me if I'm wrong, folks in the chat, but it was 2012 or 2014 when Obama came in there and said he wasn't going to do the pipeline. And then it took him up until November 2016, when he knew that he wasn't going to get elected, to actually put a pause on that pipeline, allowing a lot of that to be reversed with the next administration, Donald Trump, which we saw right afterwards when Donald Trump took office, that he reversed all the environmental protections that Obama put forth.
So I'm curious, because I guess I was under the perception, and this is my own ignorance here, I was under the perception that indigenous land, or like reservations, the government could not touch that land, but it appears that's not necessarily the case.
A lot of times those battles end up in court. All of our battles end up in court, and it has a lot to do with tribal sovereignty and our treaty rights. We are technically a quasi-sovereign nation, all of our nations, the 580 plus indigenous nations of Turtle Island, and we all have different treaties written in with different negotiations between the nations and the greater nation, the United States itself. So we do have the strongest property laws within the nation. I mean, we supersede all of our farming property laws. We actually we predate the United States Constitution. That's why they had to write it into the Constitution itself. So you're right, but it's the matter of enforcing those laws and the political will to actually do something about it.
Yes, and the United States has never kept any of the treaties that were signed. The tribal nations, the land is supposed to be even greater than what they are now. And that is part of the land back, like, give us the land back because you're poisoning it, give it to the original caretakers so we can put it back the way it was. But yeah, they've never honored the treaties, and they've just kept taking land and using their laws to open it up for homesteaders and stuff like that. And when originally indigenous people were allowed to own land, there were laws that made it that we couldn't be stewards over land. So we had to have, like a white person control our finances and our land and make those decisions on behalf of us, because we weren't technically citizens. And so we had to have those people step in for us.
We weren't technically full humans, Gina. Yes. It was through the doctrine of discovery through the Catholic Church that allowed a lot of that legislation to be put forward. And since now the Pope has rescinded that doctrine of discovery, which says that indigenous people are, 2/3 human, rescinding that allows us as tribal nations to go in there and reassess a lot of those old standing laws that have taken custodialship over our lands in our ceded territories.
What about the local politicians? Like, where do they stand on this? Because I feel like there needs to be some type of push for them to get them to make sure that these treaties are honored to begin with in the first place. Where do they stand on these issues? Where do they stand on the issue like Standing Rock? Were there politicians that were present at the protest?
Well, Dr. Cornell West was there. We had a lot of the squad starting their political careers within our camps themselves. AOC, Ilhan Omar, Cori Bush, they started their political careers within the same camp with Shailene Woodley. And as for the treaty rights, it's been an ongoing conversation for generations with our local politicians, our national politicians, and our tribal politicians, because our tribes, they have to be governed a certain way under the way that the government has set out for us to get our
rights, our entitled treaty rights.
Yes, our entitled treaty rights.
I'm sorry, my brother. If I can just chime in too, I think a lot of people are uneducated about treaties also. There's a lot of education saying that, we had Thanksgiving and we just gave them the land and everything's all hunky-dory, when in actuality, that's not how it was. You had indigenous tribes who were on this land for thousands and tens of thousands of years, and contrary to popular belief, we were a key species. We cultivated gardens and we farmed the land where we didn't take any nutrients out of the soil, and we had civilization and systems set up to hold people accountable. And so when people, even think about indigenous laws and rights and stuff like that, they're very uneducated and uninformed. That there are these treaties out there, then that's why there are reservations. A lot of the treaties were signed is because indigenous people, we just want to live as good neighbors. We want to be able to take care of ourselves as Mother Earth intended. And, when European settlers came over, the colonizers came over, they were bent on destruction, basically taking the land and using it for their own and not caring who they destroy in the past. So after many years of fighting, they finally found out that, hey, you can't take us out that easily. So let's trick them into signing these treaties saying, hey, you can live on this plot of land and we'll live on this plot of land and we'll live as good neighbors. And you can keep your rights to hunt, gather, and fish and do your ceremony. And then after those treaties were signed, the United States government never followed them. I mean, it was illegal for an indigenous person to speak the language and to practice their religious beliefs and the culture up until it was finally made legal in the 1970s. Indigenous people were arrested and beaten, and our children were taken away from us and put in boarding schools where they were forced not to speak their language and not to be who they are. And they were just brutally abused into being into the system where it's just a very oppressive system. And it's really, really sad.
Yes, I agree 100%. And then it didn't end with Standing Rock. After Standing Rock, there was Line 3. So this was another pipeline that the government was trying to put through. I remember I talked about this briefly when there was a confrontation in reference to Amy Klobuchar. She was actually campaigning, and there were protesters that came to her campaign announcement or one of their campaign events, and they said, stop Line 3, because apparently part of that went through Minnesota as well. But again, another pipeline that they were trying to put through that obviously was going to impact indigenous land. So for me, it's just what I want people to really understand. Had it not been for the protests, especially at Standing Rock, and had it not been for independent media being there on the ground because mainstream media didn't want to cover it, that probably still would have went through. And it's not just the Dakotas, and we'll get to Line 3 in just a second. It's not just the Dakotas, but it's also the Appalachia. I don't know if some people say
Mountain
Appalachia.
Valley Pipeline.
That's right. Another pipeline that they're trying to put through. And again, you don't see these pipelines go through rich communities or white communities. They're usually trying to put these pipelines through indigenous communities or Black communities. Like there's a lot of environmental pollution that's happening, and it's usually happening to people of color or people that are poor or people that are working class. Like rich people don't have to worry about these issues. And I wonder with you, like in reference to line 3, did you feel like this particular pipeline received enough attention? I felt like mainstream media covered this a little bit more, but not to the point that it should have.
Yeah. Oh, if I may, I'm sorry. Line 3 did not receive the media it needed to receive at all. Line 3 is going through nearly half of North America's freshwater. It's going through 200 bodies of water and through 200 river crossings. And they didn't even have to leak oil to poison the water. Just fracking out and then breaching the aquifers poisoned the water to where you can't even swim in it. June of 2021, we occupied and stopped construction for 8 days, occupied an Enbridge easement over the Mississippi River. And hundreds of us drank the water out of the Mississippi River in that location, and we did not get sick. And we and our children swam that river. And after our occupation, Enbridge successfully shoved that tar sand oil pipeline through the Mississippi, fracked out toxic poisonous chemicals. And not only that, they breached an aquifer. So when they breached the aquifer, the water forced all those chemicals out beyond where it was leaking out. And so it poisoned the water in the Mississippi, where our fish developed blisters and they died. You can no longer even step foot in that river without developing a horrible rash. And it's really concerning because at the same time, Minnesota Governor Walz approved of these permits for this pipeline that's threatening nearly half of North America's freshwater. Water became a commodity on Wall Street. This is the last of Canada's oil that's flowing through Line 3. A lot of us feel that, they're looking for a new way to make money, and Line 3 was originally supposed to go through Canada, and Canada's like, no, we don't want that through here. So why not put a toxic tar sands oil pipeline through nearly half of North America's freshwater, make it scarce, poison it, and then make money off the scarcity of water? It's completely ridiculous. And most of that oil that is flowing through Line 3 is being sold to China. So China can make plastics out of it. And anything that's made out of plastic can be made out of hemp. And, that's another reason that, I keep showing up and doing these interviews. I get so nervous, speaking out and stuff like that. But there is hope. We can do stuff to even fix the climate change that's happening, the catastrophes. Scientists predicted with breathtaking accuracy the devastation that using fossil fuels would do. And they still continued to move forward and use them, and we didn't need them. And, these same scientists say we have less than 10 years left to make a drastic change. And we're capable of doing that. We saw with the pandemic that we don't have to be driving back and forth to work every day and going all these places. And then that too, with hemp, you can make anything out of hemp, build houses out of hemp. Mm-hmm. Hemp restores nutrients to the soil. The topsoil in the United States is depleting nutrients drastically because of the industrial farming practices. And then on top of that, hemp can clean the air. It's an excellent carbon sequestration. 1 hectare of industrial hemp can absorb 15 tons of CO2 per hectare. Hemp's rapid growth makes it one of the fastest CO2 to biomass conversion tools available. It's more efficient than the agroforestry. So, we have the capabilities and the technology to save the world, basically, but all these politicians are focusing on furthering the fossil fuel development when that is not what we need at all. Biden even the approval of the Willow project up in Alaska. Yep. That is just detrimental. That project threatens to unleash 260 million metric tons of CO2 into the atmosphere, in the next 30 years. And we can't be having that happen. We have less than 10 years to make a drastic change. So, it's just time for us to really be aware, and it's a sense of urgency, because we can change it. We just need to all come together and take to the streets and talk to your mama about it. You know, I even talked to the people who changed my oil about it. Like, we can do this. We can change this catastrophe that's unfolding in front of our eyes.
Right. This is important because I think, you know, at least for me, by the time I found out about line 3, by the time I found out about the water in Flint, the damage had already been done, at least in reference to Flint. The people were already, you know, poisoned. The people were already sick. Like, but that was, I found out about it after those things had started to happen. Jackson, Mississippi, their water also contamination. Luckily, I did find out about that when it happened. But I honestly think that we have to continue to inform people that these things are going on, because mainstream media is not doing their job in reference to this. Look at what's happening right now with East Palestine, Ohio. Like, mainstream media talked about it for a little bit in the beginning, and now you don't really hear them saying anything about it. The president of the United States hasn't even made an appearance there. When you talk about the Willow Project, that's also indigenous land. And what's really upsetting about the Willow Project is that one of the politicians that approved it is indigenous. You may be familiar with who I'm referring to. I forget her name, but I was really like appalled, like just shocked and appalled. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep, I'm very angry about that one. Of all people to back a project like that, Deb Haaland, is just really disheartening. You know, there's 2 billion people around the world that don't have access to clean, safe drinking water. You know, it's like 46% of the world's population lack adequate sanitation services, and half the global population could face water scarcity challenges by 2025. I mean, you have the Colorado River, one of the most important river systems in the country, that's drying up at an alarming rate. It's super scary.
And on your notion that we didn't get enough attention, they didn't come until about the tail end of our movement, until weeks until that they were done actually putting in the pipeline itself. Not to say that we hadn't made national news. A handful of our indigenous water protector women were on, what was it, the New York Post front page. Mm-hmm. And then Gina herself has made Miss Magazine, and we've been interviewed by national media here and there. But every time we do get something covering us, it's either in like deep into the newspaper, or it's just briefly covered and not actually nationalized on national media itself. Amy Goodman, of course, has covered Line 3 extensively.
Right.
I can't give as much credit to Amy Goodman and the work that she's doing over in Democracy Now! But for the most part, you know, you said that this has started in Standing Rock, and in all realities, this has been 500 plus years of indigenous resistance. And, you know, I think of my elder, rest in peace, John Trudell, who did a 16-week sit-in of the Alcatraz Island, and him going on the local radio, broadcasting from Alcatraz, and just giving daily updates, because it doesn't get broadcast. The revolution will not be broadcasted. And it's important for us to be boots on the ground, but also engaged in our local independent media spaces so we can get that word out. Miigwech again for having us on the show. Line 3 was completely scary, and Gina covered a lot of that. You know, the oil itself is coming from Alberta, Canada, which is the people of the First Nations territory, and they're stealing that oil from their lands, and it comes into the United States on 3 in North Dakota, and then goes on to 5 in Michigan and Wisconsin, turns into 7 and goes into 9, and then goes back into Canada on 9, and puts onto a freighter and shipped over to China. The reason why they did that is because the West Coast put up a oil tanker ban after the XL Valdez spill back in the late 80s, early 90s. So Gina also mentioned that Canada didn't want it to go through. Manitoba took a vote against having the line go through them. It I think it was called Energy East, if I remember right. And they bought out our North Dakota politicians, which wasn't that hard because of the Bakken oil fields and what happened with No Dapple. And then they also bought out for 2-3 decades the Democratic and the Republican Party of Minnesota and Wisconsin. And that's where you see Colin Peterson, 3-decade-long representative out of Minnesota, getting paid by Enbridge $5,000 per campaign season, and still pushing that line along with Governor Walz, who's a Democrat himself, very well knowing that it's going to harm the indigenous tribes of his nation, or excuse me, of his state.
That's right. It's all about money.
Yeah, and if I can just say, you are right. There isn't enough coverage on this. I mean, there were over 1,000 arrests resisting Line 3. And, you didn't even see that being covered. People are risking their lives and their freedom trying to resist this. We don't want to be out in the streets. It's dangerous. I mean, I was arrested for praying. And then another time I was arrested. We're all peaceful, unarmed, nonviolent water protectors, and another time I was arrested, I was tased and my finger was broken, and very violently. And I'm not the only one. I think even the more devastating thing is to see my sisters who are in prayer and in ceremony violently ripped out of ceremony, out of praying, and brutally arrested. You have these huge officers against these tiny little women. I mean, we have video evidence of officers legitimately pushing our grandmas to the ground. I mean, and they're just standing on the side of the road. I mean, they're not doing anything wrong, yet they're violently coming after us. I mean, this has to be serious if, people are risking their lives and the freedom, and the officers are acting as mercenaries for a foreign corporation to help poison our land. That's basically what they're doing. It's just, this is their land and their water too, and they're helping people poison it for no reason at all. It's scary. It's disheartening, but we got to keep fighting.
To clarify that, Enbridge paid the Minnesota government, the Minnesota law enforcement, to cover Line 3. They had a special task force called the Northern Lights Task Force that was trained by paramilitary organizations out of Iraq and Afghanistan, who were also out on No Dapple, the Standing Rock. And they've been catering these anti-protest teaching and tactics. And that's what's going over into Cop City now. And not to mention that Cop City is actually being put on indigenous land itself. That's why we have land defenders. That's why Tortugula, who was murdered 3 months ago, that's why he was there. He was protecting indigenous lands. And as you said it, Sabby, water protectors, our indigenous movement is cross social economic boundaries, class lines. It covers all of us. And that's why we're able to stand here in Minnesota and go march and pray with the George Floyd family after George gets murdered, and why we're able to, go hand in hand with our relatives and stand at Standing Rock, stand with our East Coast natives against the Mountain Valley Pipeline that Joe Manchin just got steamrolled through Congress.
Yep.
Along with NEPTA deregulations. That conversation we just had about Bismarck being able to have that vote. Well, Joe Manchin took that vote away. He took that vote away from all of our communities by deregulating NEPTA.
It's a mess.
Yeah, we're all in this together. We're all facing the oppression. I mean, the United States government was built on genocide and slavery. The system's working exactly as it was designed. So very few can make ridiculous amounts of money off the suffering of others. And it doesn't need to be that way. It's never needed to be that way. And I think, that is another reason that there is this continued genocide upon the indigenous population. We have the whole blood quantum thing. So if I were to I'm a tribal member, and, we have blood quantum, and But if I were to have children with my husband, they wouldn't have enough of that blood quantum to be considered a tribal member. And that's just another way for them to complete that genocide upon us, so then they can take that land and do what they want with it. And all they want to do is poison it. We've seen it firsthand, and it needs to stop.
And that's the
Well
long-term
said.
plan. And they have short-term plans in hand and currently engaged. Like the whole battle on ICWA, Sabrina, I don't know if you know this, but the Indian Child Welfare Act is being challenged within the Supreme Court on racial grounds. And the lead lawyer group, the law firm that's representing the opposition, is Gibson Dunn, which represented the pipeline industries out of Standing Rock, and they also represent the majority of our hedge fund and big corporate industries across the United States. And what their intentions are is because how ICWA was originally crafted and how it was written, they're challenging that. And what ICWA is, it's designed to develop a relationship between two nations. Because Gina and I are dual citizens. We're dual citizens of the United States, and we're also a citizen of the Turtle Mountain Band of Anishinaabe. And what ICWA did is allowed the conversation between the two nations on what happens to those children. Well, how ICWA was designed, how ICWA was written, they're challenging that and calling it unconstitutional basis on race, which is not. We're not, as indigenous tribes, yes, we are a tribe, a racial group, yes, a racial group, but we're also a sovereign nation, and they're trying to erase the sovereignty in that and define us as race. And doing that with ICWA has automatic repercussions down the line. And as I said before, we had legal cases on the majority of our land claims and on these environmental cases. Well, that gives the opportunity for that opposition to take all of those claims, all of those legal cases, and challenge them in court and get them overturned based off of what they did to ICWA itself. And that's automatic erasure of our tribal nations. And I can foresee right now that them using that narrative and using that precedent set forth through SCOTUS to take our tribes out of trust. And trust, I know it might be a new word for a lot of your viewers in the group, but trust simply means it's the government funding mechanism and relationship with that tribe. And when we're taken out of trust, that pretty much dissolves our IRA government, our Indian responsible agency or government, the way they set us up, and that dissolves our tribe and our band itself from being recognized within the treaties or within the United States government. And it's not far-fetched to believe that, because Donald Trump took the Wampum Mashpee tribe out of trust in 2018, which was put into trust in 2008 by Obama. Oofta, I know I just unloaded a lot of stuff right there. But what I'm trying to get to is that ICWA case that is coming up within the next few days. If it's found unconstitutional, they have a chance to go at our children, but they also have a chance to go after all of our land and our tribal nations themselves.
It's another
grief.
Side.
I want to move on to Leonard Peltier, because I think a lot of people are not aware of this. There were some people that were aware of it last night. They mentioned it in the chat to Dr. West, but also Dr. West knows who Leonard Peltier is as well. Both of you are actually distant relatives of Leonard Peltier. Now, obviously, he was, for those who are not aware, was an indigenous activist. He was accused of killing 2 FBI agents. Now, from what I've read about his particular situation, it seems as though that is not the case. And he is being held there as a political prisoner, so to speak. So I want to talk a little bit about that so people can understand, there's more than one political prisoner. It's not just Julian Assange, for one, but for two, can you explain to people what happened with Leonard's situation?
I got this one, Gina. So keynoting the 1960s to the 1980s, the American treaty wars, Gina and I are water protectors. We base a lot of our engagements with the United States off of our treaty rights. It got violent back in the 1960s to 1980s. We had the United States government sparked the Trail of Broken Treaties, which was a 3-month march from North Dakota all the way to Washington D.C. that striked a 17-day sit-in of the Department of Interior, which is where a lot of this first spawns out of. A lot of our early treaty wars in the 1900s spawned it out of. And after that 17-day sit-in, the American Indian movement kind of developed along those lines. And from there, we had mass sit-ins across the United States using treaty law along with current legislation to repossess government land that was no longer used and vacated. For instance, they did a 19-month sit-in starting on I want to say it was September 1969 of the Alcatraz Island. John Trudell, the American Indian movement, and they held that space for 19 months. Fast forwarding, we had COINTELPRO, we had the FBI, we had Nixon, the BIA, all organizing against, not just the American Indian movement, the segregate or the Black Panthers and our allies all across, Turtle Island. They locked down and they doubled down. They infiltrated our movements. They started going after our family members, state-sanctioned violence, state-sanctioned murders. We would find our family members without hands and without teeth, because at that time, that was the only way to identify who they were. And it was purposely done to keep us silent, to shut us up. It would happen with Leonard Peltier, who was, he is one of our civil rights leaders for the American Indian movement, along with John Trudell. A whole lot of great people that we, were on their shoulders, because, we wouldn't be here without them. Dennis Banks, they started targeting our leadership, and they went after Leonard on a ranch out of South Dakota. Oh, what was the year? It was 1975, Pine Ridge Reservation, and it was a illegal search and seizure on that land, of course, and it resulted in 2 FBI agents getting shot and killed. The judge, the defense attorney, FBI agents of the time have all came out and spoken, saying that the evidence against Leonard Peltier was wrong. It was faulty. And then that they also demand that he gets pardoned and freed. And honestly, we've been going up every year to get him pardoned. And we asked every president, Biden, Trump, Obama, they've ignored it. But every year, a really great independent media investigator did an interview with a FBI agent out of Minnesota who dealt with a lot of the Leonard Peltier case. What's his name, Gina? Red Power, Red Nation. Nick Estes from Red Nation interviewed the FBI agent that whistleblowed, telling us that every year when we go up to get Leonard pardoned, that the heads of the departments of the FBI would all write op-eds negatively against Leonard Peltier every year. And you can see that in our media, that every year you have these slams against Leonard Peltier, because he is a political prisoner. To this day, he is a warning to people like Gina and I and our water protectors all across the nation, our indigenous people that want to rise up, reminding us that, Leonard's still sitting. He's still there.
Yeah, so like they have evidence to prove that he didn't do what he did. The original judge who tried him even came out and said that Leonard shouldn't be in jail. They're really using him as an intimidation factor. And, growing up, we were always warned, like, don't get involved. Look what happened to Leonard. And, I really, it's really sad. We cannot get intimidated. I was ran over by a cop at a George Floyd rally. I've been tased, I've been maced, I've been arrested for praying. My house has been tampered with. I've had to get cameras on my house just to make sure that people don't mess with my house anymore. I've been followed. I had to get a dash cam. One of our water protectors were falsely accused of trying to run over pipeliners. And so we really even have to have cameras on ourselves to prove that we're not doing anything wrong. And it's just an intimidation factor, and we cannot let them intimidate us. We have to keep showing up because they want us to be silent about it. Like, that's why there's not that much media coverage. They're taking those payouts to not focus on all this damage and destruction and oppression that just doesn't need to be happening.
That's right. 100%. There is a petition that you can sign for those of you watching. Free Leonard Peltier. Eric, when you get a chance, if you can put this in the chat. It says sign the petition. Here's a picture of Leonard Peltier here. And you can follow their journey as well. It talks about like what happened at, Pine Ridge. Don't let Leonard die in prison. Again, like when I read about his particular situation, I did see some similarities with what's happening with Julian Assange. Like, same thing. He's just sitting there. Right. But it's been over 40 years. And if the judge has come forward and the judge has said that, he needs to be freed by this point in time, like they should let him go. Like, it just, again, I do feel like what you said, it is an intimidation tactic. Is like they're just trying to keep him there to make an example out of him. I feel the same way about Julian Assange. Like, I think obviously they need to let Julian Assange go. And I feel like they're just keeping him there as an intimidation tactic. And it's ridiculous. But it's just, I wanted you guys to come on to talk about this tonight, because I did find out, I noticed like when some people in the chat were saying Leonard Peltier, and I've seen that name come up a couple times during the live streams, people would contact me and ask who is this person? What happened? But not just because of that, but people need to hear that these things are happening. People need to hear that these issues are going on. Most of the time, reporters are not going into, the Appalachia, mountains. They're not going into the Blue Hills of Kentucky. They're not going into indigenous communities in the Dakotas. Like, they avoid those areas. And I don't know why, but they do avoid those areas. And so the type of, environmental pollution, the intimidation tactics from the FBI, from the police, from the politicians that happen to those communities oftentimes is not documented. And if it is documented, there's very little coverage of it. And so I think more people need to hear about this. And I think people need to spread your message, because both of you are like probably, I think, the first people that I've ever met. And Gina, I think I met you in person at the Assange rally, right? I think you're the first two people I've ever met from the Dakotas. That's like, actually, I had a friend that moved there one time, but I'd never met anyone that was actually from. So I don't even know what it's like. But hearing your story and hearing my friend's story and experience there, it's a very different place from where I live. Like those of us on the East Coast, and I think those on the West Coast as well. But also, I think oftentimes when we do talk about different groups in this country, it does seem like to me indigenous people are not mentioned. And that goes for politicians as well. They'll mention the Black community because they know Democratic Party knows they need us in order to win. They'll mention the Latino community. Republicans and Democrats will mention them. They'll mention, suburban, white communities, things like that. But I notice it seems like the indigenous people are often forgotten. And I think that we need to do better, not you guys, but I think those of us in independent media we need to do better about covering these issues that's happening to indigenous communities as well. So I thank both of you for coming on to share this with us.
Language. And I do have to give a shout out to Climate Defiance. You brought up the Klobuchar protest. Mm-hmm. So we were involved with all three, just to be legitimate on this. Allegedly. We originally went in on Klobuchar in 2021. And that was organized from one of the lead organizers of Climate Defiance from Washington. He had us all ready just to walk in there and get everyone riled up and get in there. It's perfect. So when they had a chance to do it, what was it, 2 weeks ago? They consulted with us and we gave them some talking points and cheered them on. But we were just with that group during the White House Correspondents' protests, the dinner protests. So it was a whole week of great fun shenanigans, good trouble, because we went into a John Podesta speech, interrupted that when he was talking on the climate. Alex Azali, Biden's climate czar, that poor man, we hit him like 5 or 6 times throughout the last 4 weeks. I mean, I bet you he's just there crying. And those youth out of Climate Defiance, they're a bunch of young, rambunctious. And when we have discussions on infiltrators and being co-opted by the establishment, it's not just a brief text message discussion. It's let's talk everything out. So they're giving me confidence that they're going to withstand the corporate establishment from insurging and taking them over.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for coming on. And where can people find you on social media if you want to be found?
Well, I would, people out there, check out Honor the Earth, honortheearth.org, Honor the Earth on anything social media. You can find me all over there, all the good work we do. And then Gina Peltier on Facebook and Pucky Peltier on Instagram. And we always have a lot going on. Right now we're gearing up to fight Line 5 full front force. And so we have a bunch of events and activities going on that we'll be hosting in Wisconsin to bring awareness to that. That is really detrimental. It's being close to spilling because of the floods, and then they are gearing up to start construction again. And then, this September, the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, is going to host a historic global climate ambition summit in New York. So we are hoping and we are planning to do something big. And we have a lot of organizations that are working with us. And there's a launching Zoom podcast on June 15th with Jane Fonda and other fossil fuel fighters in New York and across the country to give more information on that. So check out Honor the Earth. All that information is going to be posted on our website and all our social medias. But that's where you can find me. How about you, Joey? Sorry.
Well, you can find me in Sabby's chat. I'm normally watching the show, and I'm also been attending the call-in sessions. They've been pretty awesome. Other than that, I'm with Honor the Earth and also the Indigenous Environmental Network. I contract between both. And you can find me at Ernest Joseph Uppegard Peltier III on Facebook. And I think it's just Joey Peltier on Twitter.
Yeah, and Sabby, thank you so much for all you do. I did get a little starstruck when I met you, and I fumbled over my words, but thank you so much again for all you do and giving us this space.
Well, thank you guys, both of you, so much for coming on, and I'll talk to you later.
Giga Wagaman.
Awesome. Those are the Peltier kids, guys. Yes, you can learn so much from them. Thank you so much. Soul says, much love to Gina and Joey. Absolutely. We need to hear about these issues. We need to hear about them. I want to go ahead and give a quick shout out to Sabby patrons. We'll go to the thumbnail and then we'll get into the rest of tonight's stories. So, and happy Friday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you so much for your support. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters. Don't forget about those Sabbies. And of course, members. You can see all of their names here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. And I want to give a special shout out to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Frederick Blackwell and Kalel. Whoop, whoop. Thank you guys so much. Really do appreciate that. Okie doke. We have some stories tonight. Let's go ahead and get into that thumbnail. Jeez. I don't know. I think the theme tonight is corruption again. I think corruption is really the theme. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, we are also discussing Donald Trump indicted. Yes, this is a different issue. Breaking news today. So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into some Trump trouble. And then we're going to discuss Joe Biden's bribe alerts. Joe Biden is also being investigated. So we have a former president and a current president. Both of them seem to be in hot water. We're also going to discuss RFK Jr. builds steam. That's an interesting story I want you to hear about there. And people are starting to get a little bit worried. And of course, Kamala Harris eyes Haiti. This is a story I don't think a lot of people are aware of. So I'm going to get into that as well. I'm not going to let that fly under the radar. And the Peltier kids were just here to talk about water protection and free Leonard Peltier. So here we go. Shout out to Sam. Thank you so much for becoming a member. Whoop, whoop. I see the Charlie Chapman there. Okie doke. We're going to get started with this story here about Kamala Harris because I feel like this story is not getting much attention. And I do not want it to fly under the radar, like I said. So you need to know what Kamala Harris has been up to. So apparently, Kamala Harris had a trip recently to the Caribbean to attend a conference called CARICOM. Now, she is there in the Caribbean to offer support from the U.S. government in reference to climate change. But that's not the only reason why she was there. That's just part of the story that you are going to hear. And I want to give a shout out here to Dan Cohen for bringing this to my attention. Dan said Kamala Harris is in the Bahamas to press CARICOM to invade Haiti as China and Russia reject U.S. plans at the UN Security Council. This piece right here, to invade Haiti. Because when they talk about this conference with Kamala Harris, that's not the piece that's mentioned. You have to really listen for it. But I'm going to walk you through it tonight. I'm going to walk you through it so you can see what she's really up to, what the U.S. government is really up to there. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump into the clip first. This was her meeting here. Vice President Harris co-hosts the U.S. Caribbean leaders meeting in the Bahamas. Now, this is actually on the White House YouTube page. So just FYI. The first part of this conversation, they are talking about the climate change issue in the Caribbean, how the U.S. government is going to help them. They're going to bring in money to make things a little bit better for them. But that's not the part of the conversation that I think you need to hear, because if you look at most of the media outlets, that is the story that you're going to hear. I think you need to hear this part of the conversation, which alludes to the fact that the U.S. government is getting closer to invading Haiti. And I feel like they're trying to use the disguise of we are helping the Caribbean countries, but they're invading Haiti. Listen to this. We have to pay attention to her words.
Security. Too many people in all of our countries are dying.
Let me go back a little bit forward. Go back just a little bit. Right about there. Okay, here we go.
Implementation of these reforms will have a major impact on countries in the Caribbean, and we aim to achieve these key reforms by the G20 meeting this fall. At my invitation, President Bonga will join our meeting today virtually in just a few minutes. On the issue of security, too many people in all of our countries are dying from gun violence. I will reiterate that our administration is committed to disrupt gun trafficking. We are committed to interdict shipments of arms and ammunition and hold traffickers accountable. And today I am pleased to announce that the United States Department of Justice will create a new position, a coordinator for Caribbean firearms prosecutions, which will help maximize information sharing between our countries to support the prosecution of traffickers.
In other words, the U.S. government is going to place people in the Caribbean. Obviously, when she's talking about the gun violence, again, I want to make this very clear to people. She's talking about Haiti. That's really what she's talking about. Because we've talked about before, Dan Cohen has come on and talked about this. I've had other journalists talk about this, like the gangs that are in Haiti. That's what she's referring to. Let's go on.
This effort will be aided by the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which President Biden signed last year, and includes new federal criminal offenses for firearms trafficking and straw purchases. In addition, through the U.S. law enforcement agencies, we are supporting a recently established Caribbean Crime Gun Intelligence Unit.
There you go. Just like that. Caribbean Crime Gun Intelligence Unit. So they just recently established that. You have to pay attention to the vocabulary. Like on purpose, she's not saying Haiti. But if you've been paying attention to what's happening in we know which country she's referring to.
Trinidad and Tobago.
So they're going to put the units in Trinidad and Tobago. But again, it's to watch Haiti.
To train officials in firearms investigations and help bring criminals to justice. And we will stand up a Haiti Transnational Criminal Investigative Unit.
What did I tell you? Now, this is the end of the conversation. This is not the beginning of the conversation. It sounds like it's a good idea. I'll play a little bit of that for you, but it sounds positive in the beginning. And then we get closer towards the end of the speech and you realize what they're really trying to do there. So this is Kamala Harris basically telling you that the U.S. government is trying to find a way to have a foothold in Haiti once again by using these fancy terms. Transnational Criminal Investigative Unit. In other words, they're going to spy on you. This is what they do.
In collaboration with the Haitian National Police, to facilitate investigation and prosecution of firearms and human trafficking, which affects the entire region.
Yes. Are there gangs in Haiti? Yes, absolutely. That being said, I believe the U.S. government is using that as an excuse to intervene and have a foothold in Haiti. That is what I believe. Wouldn't be the first time. You have to remember President Woodrow Wilson, he actually sent the U.S. Marines to Haiti to occupy Haiti. Not even just to occupy Haiti, but Woodrow Wilson also, they took control of Haiti's banks. And people wonder why Haiti is broke. People wonder why Haiti is poor. This goes all the way back to Woodrow Wilson. Oh, but by the way, but they'll tell Haitians not to come here, though, after they've destroyed their country.
More broadly on the issue of Haiti. First, I will say that our hearts go out to those who have lost loved ones and all who have been impacted by, just this week alone, the flooding and the earthquake.
It's always the hearts, you know, like their hearts always go out to the people. And
the international community must continue to support the Haitian people in light of the devastating humanitarian and security crisis in that country.
But they don't want you to come here. That's why Biden made sure the Haitian migrants, what did he do? He sent police officers there to turn them right back around. Right back around. They don't want you here, though.
The United States supports the development of a multinational force to Haiti. And today I am pleased to announce $53.7 million in new humanitarian aid for Haiti. In addition, our administration will support the extension of Hope Help trade preferences for Haiti, which are due for renewal in 2025.
Don't be fooled by this money, you guys. Don't be fooled by this. $53.7 million is peanuts compared to what the U.S. government owes Haiti. They just had another earthquake. So let's not sit up here and get excited like, wow, that's a lot of money. No, it's not. They've been giving billions to Ukraine. So that $53.7 million, considering the damage that the U.S. government has done to Haiti over decades, that's nothing. That's nothing. And don't be surprised if the U.S. government has some say-so in how the money can be spent and used. Like, it's just, they're not doing stuff out of the kindness of their heart.
Finally, in response to longstanding requests from our Caribbean partners, I am pleased to announce that the Biden-Harris administration has begun to process to establish an expanded diplomatic presence in the Eastern Caribbean, including 2 new embassies.
What did I tell you? That's right, Wary. It is an insult. You're 100% correct. This piece right here, she waited to almost the end of the conversation to finally explain what they are going to do to Haiti. Listen to this.
From our Caribbean partners, I am pleased to announce that the Biden-Harris administration has begun to process to establish an expanded diplomatic presence in the Eastern Caribbean, including 2 new embassies.
In other words, the U.S. government is continuing to police the world. Is that what people want in Haiti? Is this what they want? Do people in the Caribbean want the U.S. government in their backyard? Is this what they're asking for?
In conclusion, from the climate crisis to development financing to security and Haiti and diplomatic presence, we have achieved substantial progress in the last 2 years based on shared priorities, many of which have been formed and discussed through these convenings that we have had over the last 2 years. We are neighbors in the Western Hemisphere.
Neighbors, but we can't come to your house. We're neighbors in the Western Hemisphere, but you didn't want those neighbors to come here. That's why you sent them back home. Make it make sense.
And the security and prosperity of this region requires the type of collaboration and partnership that we have developed and continued to grow over the last 2 years. It is the full intention of our administration in the United States to continue this good work, knowing, of course, there is more to do, but that progress has been made.
You know, when it comes to the countries where it's Black people or people of color, it's always about we made some type of progress. And they stop right there. $53.7 million is peanuts considering the damage that's been done to those countries. I want you to sit back and think about something for a second. Our government has given billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine. But when it comes to the Black countries, we give you $53.7 million. I hope people see the problem here. This is a big problem because you have the money. And I know some people say, well, Russia and Ukraine are, they're having a war. So it doesn't matter. The money is there. The money is there. Why don't you give Haiti the money that you stole from them, the resources that you stole from them, to help Haiti get back on its feet and to have a prospering outlook? Why don't you do that? Now, there's an article I want to show you also from the Miami Herald. Listen to this, because this one kind of gives it away a little bit more. Kamala Harris will push for a multinational force in Haiti during visit to the Caribbean. And let me tell you something. It's a reason why they sent her and not Joe Biden. Okay. No. Send the black Indian woman because they'll be more friendly towards her. Send her, don't send the white guy. Let's be real. Listen to this. The Biden administration has pushed for a multinational force to be deployed to Haiti since October. But the plan has faltered due to lack of any nation, including the United States, willing to step up to lead the force, and has run into opposition at the United Nations Security Council, with Russia and China expressing skepticism over the plan. In Nassau, the vice president will reiterate our administration's support for a multinational force in Haiti. That came from senior administration official. Listen to this part. Any decisions about such a security force would be done in consultation with the Haitian government as well as the UN. Those discussions are still ongoing, the official added. We will remain in coordination with partners on next steps to address urgent security needs. More than 165,000 people are internally displaced in Haiti due to gang violence, the International Organization for Migration said on Thursday. I've interviewed multiple journalists on this show about this particular situation in Haiti. It's not just because of the gang violence. It's also because of poverty. They're rejected everywhere they try to go. They can't go to the Dominican Republic. I told you about a story a couple of months ago where the Dominican Republic was telling the Haitians, even the ones who were born there, to get out. They can't come. They try to come to the United States. They try to migrate to the United States. Everybody else seems to make it over the border wall except for them. When they showed up in large numbers, the Biden administration sent the police at the border and turned them right back around. Can't have all those Haitians coming here. But everybody else seems to make it over the wall. This is something you need to think about. So for me, you need to know that it's not just because of the gang violence, it's also because of the poverty situation, which is partly caused by the U.S. government. And then also partly caused by France. You have to know that Haiti had to pay reparations to France, not the other way around. So they feel so sorry for these people, but they don't want them here. You see what I mean? Kamala Harris says you're our neighbor in the Western Hemisphere, but don't come here. It's a mess. He goes on to say the agency said that severe floods caused by torrential rains are affecting over 46,000 people and displacing another 13,000 others. And that an earthquake that hit the country on June 6th is further compounding the humanitarian crisis. Not once in this paragraph do they mention anything about the poverty situation. This is the problem. And when she was there, like I told you at the beginning of the speech, she's talking about We're going to help these climate changes. Listen to this.
Since we last met, I do believe we have made significant progress. Regarding the existential threat of the climate crisis, Caribbean nations are on the front lines. We have discussed, for example, powerful storms that can wipe out economic progress, low-lying islands that face erosion, flooding, and deadly storm surge from rising seas. These discussions resulted in the launch of our U.S.-Caribbean partnership to address the climate crisis, or as we call it, PAC 2030, last year at the Summit of the Americas. PAC 2030 is designed to help accelerate the Caribbean's transition to clean energy and to promote energy security and climate resilience.
So that's how the conversation started. It sounded like good things. Oh, wow, we're really trying to help them with the climate issue in their countries. But then you get to the root of what they're really trying to do. It's a hot mess. It's a hot mess, you guys. So I hope you guys can see through the BS. They have billions of dollars that they can give the European countries. But when it comes to the Black countries like Haiti and those other countries in the Caribbean, you get your 57.3 million. Get out of here. Get out of here with that. It's a hot mess. Oh, and by the way, send the Black Indian woman to deliver the message because Joe Biden can barely talk, can barely stand, and he's the white guy. Jesus. Just Z says, come Haiti, don't fall for it. Where he says Kamala's gone all cop Mala again. LB says hands off Haiti. Thank you for the super chat, Eric. Attacking a nation like Haiti who cannot fight you back is a coward move, just like the crap Biden is pulling against Uganda over the anti-LGBTQ laws. Boom. There you go. Robert says world police state. I agree. Thank you for the super chat. Chima, why is it when foreigners come to the U.S., many of them develop this weird hatred and bloodlust against their own home country? I don't know. I mean, I don't know people who are doing that. But I think you would have to ask them that question. I don't know. I really don't know. Could be propaganda from the United States. But we are moving on to our next story. So, breaking news, Donald Trump is being indicted again. Now, this is a different situation. This news broke, I think it was late last night when I first saw this, but more information has been developing throughout the day. They are really going after Donald Trump in reference to those documents, the classified documents that they found at Mar-a-Lago. So we are going back to that again. I want to share a little bit of information here from what they revealed on ABC News. And then I also want to call out some hypocrisy in reference to taking classified documents and what I think this is really about. Let's get into this clip here.
Council's investigation into former President Donald Trump. ABC News has confirmed at this hour that Donald Trump and his lawyers have just been informed about 20 minutes ago that the former president needs to be at a federal court in Miami on Tuesday at 3 p.m. to be processed on federal charges. This, of course, would be the first president ever to be indicted on federal charges. I want to bring in several members of our investigative team, beginning with Catherine Falders, our senior reporter. And Catherine, what are your sources telling you as far as the number of counts at this point and the range of what's being charged here?
David, we're learning from our sources that there appears to be at least 7 counts here. This ranges from everything from the willful retention of national defense information to conspiracy, to a scheme to conceal, to false statements and representations. Obviously, this is part of a more than years-long investigation by special counsel Jack Smith and Trump's efforts to obstruct the government to give documents in his possession with classification markings back to government investigators who at multiple times throughout this investigation have tried to retrieve them from Trump. They still had questions about whether Trump still currently has classified documents in his possession. But again, we're learning that at this hour, we're told by our sources that there are at least 7 counts here, and they range from everything from willful retention of national defense information to conspiracy to concealing documents of record, David.
Catherine.
Let me just pause here for a second because I don't want people to get confused. Last time when we talked about the Trump indictment, that was in reference to his business dealings. That was the pressure that was brought on from the state of New York. So just FYI, this is a different situation. These are those classified documents that they said were at Mar-a-Lago that he took, that they said he was not supposed to take. So there's 7 counts in reference to this particular case. The previous one in reference to his business dealings, I think they came up with like over 30 something counts, but some of those counts were the same thing. It was just, they made a count for every charge that they said was a faulty charge. So I just want to make that clear because I don't want people to be confused and be like, why are we talking about this again? Different situation. So let's go back in.
Falders, our senior investigative reporter with our investigative unit, again reporting just moments ago that Donald Trump, the former president, and his lawyers have been told to appear in a federal court in Miami next Tuesday. 3 p.m. is the time we're told, but we're still reporting this out. Catherine's reporting so far at least 7 counts. Again, our team working on this, at least 7 counts ranging from obstruction to willful retention. To conspiracy, also part of the initial reporting on what could be coming from the special counsel. I want to get right to our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, working his sources over at the Justice Department. And Pierre, what are you learning from the people you're talking with?
Well, David, we have been told by sources who have been following the case that Trump is expected to appear on Tuesday to be processed in connection with these charges. And we've been told by multiple sources that the special counsel has specifically been focusing on efforts to illegally retain classified documents and producing evidence to show that Trump also willfully obstructed the government's efforts to get those documents back. And David, I can put this in perspective. This is perhaps one of the most consequential investigations the Justice Department has done in recent memory. We're talking about investigating a former president who's seeking to be reelected. They knew this was one of the most consequential cases that they've ever pursued, and I'm told that they have built a case month by month to produce compelling evidence to lay out in detail what Trump did in terms of taking the documents from the White House and then what he did in response to a government subpoena to return those documents. Now,
let's just pause here for a second, because would they even be doing this right now if Donald Trump wasn't running for president again? Ask yourself that question. You have to question the timing of it. I'm one of those people, I'm one of those people that when things happen, especially something significant as this, I like to question the timing. And it just seems pretty convenient to me that it's being done now that he's running for office again. So it's almost as if we can't beat him at the ballot box, let's beat him in court. This is not to say that Trump should not be held accountable. People have to be held accountable. But it is to say the timing of this let's hold someone accountability is a little suspect, at least to me. That's how I'm looking at it. We'll go on a little bit more here, and then I have another clip I want to show you.
Also being told that law enforcement and sources will be stepping up security in and around that courthouse in Miami because they don't know quite what the response will be. But again, clearly a very consequential moment, and we'll be hearing more in the coming hours and days, David.
Pierre, just stick with me here because I know your sources are telling you multiple counts. Catherine's reporting at least 7 counts at this hour. And Pierre, as you know, these counts range from obstruction, conspiracy, willful retention of documents pertaining to the national defense. What does this tell you? It would seem it involves more than just the former president when you hear conspiracy being listed as one of these potential multiple counts here.
When you look at the case that they previously laid out in terms of the affidavit for the search warrant, in terms of why they went in, it was clear that the government had indications that there were people working with the president to perhaps move documents, hide documents. There's a key moment that we've been reporting on for some weeks, David, where apparently after receiving the subpoena, Trump and his associates knew that federal prosecutors were going to come to Mar-a-Lago. And apparently there's surveillance footage from the room where some of these documents were being held, in which someone is seen taking the documents out the day before the prosecutors were supposed to get there. And also, David, here's another key thing. Well, you know that one of the attorneys for former President Trump issued a statement provided to DOJ saying, as far as they knew, all the documents had been provided.
As far as they knew, all the documents had been provided. Now, Trump has actually responded as well. So I want to show this to you because he actually did release a video letting people know that he was being indicted by the DOJ over the classified documents. And again, I think they think that this is just actually going to hurt Donald Trump. I actually think every time they come after him with something else, it actually just makes him more popular, just like last time. Listen to this.
Very sadly, we're a nation in decline, and yet they go after a popular president, a president that got more votes than any sitting president in the history of our country, by far, and did much better the second time in the election than the first. And they go after him on a boxes hoax, just like the Russia hoax and all of the others. This has been going on for 7 years. They can't stop because it's election interference at the highest level. There's never been anything like what's happened. I'm an innocent man. I'm an innocent person. They had the Mueller hoax, the Mueller report, and that came out. No collusion after 2.5 years. That was set up by Hillary Clinton and Democrats. But this is what they do. This is what they do so well. If they would devote their energies to honesty and integrity, it would be a lot better for our country. They could do a lot better. They could do a lot of great things. But when you look at what's happened to our country in the last 3 years, we were energy independent. We had a strong military that wasn't woke. We were doing so well.
I'm sorry. Oh, man. People just throw the word around now.
Military that wasn't woke. We were doing so well. We were respected all over the world. Got the biggest tax cuts in history, biggest regulation cuts in history. And what do? You have a president where an election was taken, got more votes than any sitting president in history by far, never anything even close. And they come after me because now we're leading in the polls again by a lot, against Biden and against the Republicans by a lot. But we're leading against Biden by a lot, a tremendous amount. And we went up to a level that they figure the way they're going to stop us is by using what's called warfare. And that's what it is. This is warfare for the law. And we can't let it happen.
I just want to say something in reference to hypocrisy. What's really interesting to me is that the Democratic Party, the number of ways that they tried to come after Donald Trump, right? Whether it was Russiagate, whether it was Donald Trump cheated on his wife with Stormy Daniels and he's president of the United States. How dare he be president because he cheated on his wife? But the same Democratic Party made excuses for Bill Clinton cheating on his wife in the Oval Office with an intern. So there's that. Then they're coming after him with the classified documents. They came after him for the business dealings. If it's like they couldn't get him on one issue, they were going to come after him on another issue. And my whole thing is, whether you like Donald Trump or not, and I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, after a while, it starts to kind of seem like a witch hunt. All these people going after one person. If they can't get them on one issue, they try to get them on another issue. And it's funny because they're acting like, so Donald Trump is the only person who's had bad business dealings. We're going to get into a story about someone else's bad business dealings after this. But we're supposed to believe Donald Trump is the only one. We're supposed to believe Donald Trump's the only one who cheated on his wife, the only president. Give me a break, man. It's hilarious to me, but I don't think that this is doing what they think it's going to do. I think this is not helping the Democratic Party. I think it's only helping Donald Trump by making him look like more of a martyr, so to speak. And I think this is only weakening Joe Biden's position more and more.
We can't let it happen. Our country is going to hell, and they come after Donald Trump, weaponizing the Justice Department, weaponizing the FBI. We can't let this continue to go on because it's ripping our country to shreds. We have such big problems, and this shouldn't be one of them. It's a hoax. The whole thing is a hoax, just like Russia, just like the fake dossier was a hoax. You saw the Durham report. You saw the Mueller report. It was all a big hoax. You had 2 impeachments, and they lost and we won. And we had tremendous support. But that was a hoax and a scam. And now they're doing it again. It's just a continuation, 7 years, even after I'm out. But it's called election interference. They're trying to destroy a reputation so they can win an election. That's just as bad as doing any of the other things that have been done over the last number of years, and especially during the 2020 election. So I just want to tell you, I'm an innocent man. I did nothing wrong. And we will fight this out just like we've been fighting for 7 years. It would be wonderful if we could devote our full time to making America great again. And that's exactly what we did. But now, again, our country is in decline. We're a failing nation. And this is what they do. I'm an innocent man. We will prove that again. 7 years of proving it. And here we go again. Very unfair. But that's the way it is. I just want to thank everybody. We are doing something very special for our country. We're putting America first. I always put America first. And that's why we were in a position. Unfortunately, that position is no longer valid because they've done such a poor job. But we're in a position where we're going to make America great again. I'm innocent, and we will prove that very, very soundly and hopefully very quickly. Thank you very much.
Well, that was what Donald Trump said there yesterday. Again, I don't know if I would call Donald Trump innocent. I do question the timing of all of this. That is what he said yesterday, but apparently 2 of his lawyers have decided to already resign. Breaking news, 2 of Trump's lawyers resigned. Jim Trusty, I guess Jim is not so trusting. Jim Trusty and John Rowley have resigned following the news of Trump's indictment, which is set to take place in Miami on Tuesday. This is not the first time Trump's attorneys have left his side. Tim Peltier, Michael Cohen, and many others have resigned from aiding Trump in many legal battles. Does this show a lack of confidence from Trump's team in being acquitted of all charges? Listen to this.
Former President Donald Trump's lawyers have resigned following his indictment on federal charges relating to classified documents. Jim Trusty and John Rowley have just released this joint statement. They say, "This morning we tendered our resignations as counsel to President Trump, and we will no longer represent him on either the indicted case or the January the 6th investigation. It has been an honor to have spent the last year defending him, and we know he will be vindicated in his battle against the Biden administration's partisan weaponization of the American justice system." Now that the case has been filed in Miami, this is a logical moment for us to step aside and let others carry the cases through to completion. We have no plans to hold media appearances that address our withdrawals or any other confidential communications we've had with the president or his legal team.
So that happened. So the lawyers are out. I don't know if maybe in their eyes they saw if this was a game of Monopoly, maybe they felt like Trump was going straight to jail and he would not be able to pass go. I don't think that Trump is going to jail, but it seems like maybe that's what they were afraid like would happen. Now, they did release the federal indictment against Trump. It has just been unsealed, and I just want to show you what this looks like. By the way, you guys should follow this account, Disclose TV. Like, they have breaking news like on the dime, right? Like just right on the dime. Anywho, this is that unsealed document here. So it says U.S. versus Donald Trump and Waltine Nuta. So I'm not going to read this entire thing because it's mad long, but I'm just going to skim through so you can get an idea. He had lawful access to the most sensitive classified documents and national security defense information gathered and owned by the U.S., including information from agencies that compromise the U.S. intelligence community and the United States Department of Defense. Gathered newspapers, press clippings, letters, notes, cards, photographs, documents. Another thing that's mentioned here is that he stored in his boxes information regarding defense and weapon capabilities of both the U.S. and foreign countries, U.S. nuclear programs, potential vulnerabilities of the United States and its allies to military attack, and plans for possible retaliation in response to a foreign attack. The authorized disclosure of these classified documents could be put at risk, yada, yada. He departed from the White House January 20th. It says Trump caused scores of boxes, which many of which contain classified documents, to be transported to Mar-a-Lago in Florida. Goes on to say Mar-a-Lago is an active social club. It says that Mar-a-Lago was not an authorized location for storage and possession of classified documents. So you get the hint here. Like I said, I'm not reading all of this because it's like mad long. But anywho, the FBI opened up the investigation, and you can see a couple of things that they mentioned here, that Waltine Nuta was apparently directed to move boxes of documents to conceal them from Trump's attorney, the FBI, and the grand jury. So there's a lot of information here. Eric, if you want, you can put the link to this in the chat so people can look over this on their own time, because it's just so much information. But yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot. But what's really interesting, though, is I want to talk about the hypocrisy, because it was just a couple months ago I reported that Joe Biden actually was in trouble for possessing classified documents, some of which were apparently in his garage. Some were at another location. This goes back to the time when Joe Biden was vice president under the Obama presidency. So these weren't classified documents from his current position as president of the United States. These were documents that he apparently had in his possession going back to his time of being vice president under Barack Obama. But there seemed to be no push to investigate Joe Biden in reference to his classified documents. Joe Biden was able to stand in front of a press conference and just say, there was a couple of documents in my garage. They are free to go get them, and basically barely get any real pushback and fire there from liberal media. That's just a reality of the situation. So there is hypocrisy. Obviously, Donald Trump is not the sitting president. Joe Biden is. But you have to start to wonder and ask these questions. When is it okay to hold people accountable? Is it okay to hold people accountable when they are no longer in a position of power? Shouldn't we try to hold people accountable regardless of the position that they are in, whether it's a powerful position or not? Because what we have come to see, at least in this country, is that depending on your position, depending on your networks, depending on your income, chances are you are less likely to be held accountable if you are on the greater side of that. Whereas for those who are poor, those who do not have resources, they don't have the network connections, are more likely to go straight to jail. So when people talk about this particular incident with Donald Trump and the classified documents, I just want to remind you, Joe Biden has classified documents as well. There's a lot of hypocrisy that's going around. And I think if you're going to blame Donald Trump, you need to blame Joe Biden too. Just keeping it real. And question the timing. Always question the timing. Thank you for the super chat, Carrie. Jesus was a socialist and definitely not globalist or motorist. Okay. Was far from emotionless and never ever chauvinist. Few seem to know this, even less want to grow from this, even though we're broke from this. Is this from a song? It sounds like a song. Thank you for the super chat, Aberdeen71. And thank you, Stephen R. Democrats said for a decade they did not want to do aggressive things to go after Republicans that would get things done for the people. They did not want to set a precedence. That was a lie. That's right. Mari Povich would say the lie detector test determined that was a lie. Very interesting, though. But we'll keep our eye on that situation. I'll probably have more news for you Tuesday, since that's when things are really supposed to pop off around here. But speaking of corruption, apparently President Joe Biden and Hunter Biden are back in the news again in reference to their business dealings in Ukraine. And I'm saying it in that way because the clip that I'm going to show you, that's exactly how Nico House expresses it. Nico was going to give you a very quick rundown about what happened here, and then we're going to break some things down because Joe Biden is under investigation because of Hunter Biden's business dealings in Ukraine. Let's let Nico go ahead and take it away. He said, breaking, Biden under investigation by House Oversight Committee for bribery scheme involving Hunter Biden's position with Ukraine's Burisma Energy Company. Oh, Chris Wray may also be held in contempt for withholding evidence against the Bidens. I kid you not. Guys, this is wild. Let's hear it.
Hey, yo, there are bribery allegations involving Joe Biden and Hunter Biden's position on Burisma Energy Company in Ukraine, which is crazy because they were literally reporting in 2019 that there were unsupported accusations that Joe Biden improperly tried to help his son's business interests in Ukraine. But according to the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Joe Biden participated in a $5 million bribery scheme to help his son get an energy job in Ukraine. The chairman even says that Christopher Wray is in contempt because he tried to hide evidence that Joe Biden was trying to commit bribery to help the corruption of the Hunter Biden in Ukraine. Are y'all starting to see the pattern here? I'm starting to see the pattern.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into that because I know I talked about this a while back when I said that the House Oversight Committee was looking into Joe Biden and Hunter Biden's business dealings in Ukraine. But now this has made international news. Officially, it looks like they are going to have a real investigation. I probably shouldn't laugh about this. That's probably not funny. I'm sorry. But they're going to have a real investigation apparently about this. And to go along with it, they are now reporting that Joe Biden allegedly pocketed $5 million in this bribery scheme. I kid you not. Sky News Australia was on it. Let's go ahead and share. By the way, it's very difficult to find information about this on YouTube, by the way. That's why I have the one from Sky News. Sorry.
Well, the bribe and Biden allegations are heating up again today as further information has come to light. Fox News Digital is reporting that Joe Biden was paid $5 million by Ukrainian natural gas company Burisma Holdings while he was the vice president. All week, there has been headlines surrounding whether or not Joe Biden accepted a bribe from a foreign national in exchange for government policy decisions when he worked under the Obama administration. Senator Chuck Grassley and Congressman James Comer were told by a whistleblower that the FBI have in their possession a document that proved Joe Biden was involved in a criminal scheme. There wasn't proper confirmation over which foreign country this could be in relation to. However, Burisma Holdings is the same company that Hunter Biden sat on the board of from 2014 to 2019. He was reportedly paid $1 million a year and, according to invoices from his laptop, was paid over $83,000 a month to sit on the board. However, from May 2017, after Joe Biden was no longer the vice president, Hunter Biden's monthly invoices from Burisma were reduced to $41,000.
You know what's funny about this? So he was making like $83,000 a month just to sit on the board, like something that a lot of you probably never even make in 1 year. And then when Joe Biden left office, they reduced Hunter Biden's salary to like $43,000 a month. And that's still like insane, crazy amount of salary. Again, some of you will never make that in 1 year. Let's go on.
This document, which is called an FBI-generated FD 1023 form, came to be after a confidential human source gave information to the FBI about it in June 2020. According to Fox News, who have spoken to a source familiar with the document, the FBI's informant had multiple meetings with the top Burisma executive for years from 2015. The Burisma executive was keen on gaining US oil rights and getting involved with a US oil company and wanted to know how best to do it.
Now, if this executive is trying to gain US oil rights, again, just going back before Joe Biden was president, why would Joe Biden tell the lie, no more drilling, no more oil permits? Obviously, we see that's not true. I didn't believe him back then, but some people did. To get elected, that's why, right? To try to win over some of the Bernie crowd. Never had any intention of following that.
The article reads, the Burisma executive explained to the confidential source that Burisma had to pay the Bidens because Ukrainian prosecutor Viktor Shokin was investigating Burisma, and explained how difficult it would be to enter the US market in the midst of that investigation. This Burisma executive allegedly told the confidential source that he had to pay both Joe Biden and Hunter Biden $5 million each as some kind of retainer to deal with a number of issues, including the investigation led by...
Pause. That is absolutely insane. This is so dirty and grimy and corrupt. The amount of... Listen to how much money they were being paid, guys.
Executive allegedly told the confidential source that he had to pay both Joe Biden and Hunter Biden $5 million each as some kind of retainer to deal with a number of issues, including the investigation led by Shokin.
$5 million. That's insane. This is the bribe that they're referring to, the $5 million. So we had a former president who is being Jesus, I can't make this up. We have a former president who is being indicted. We have a current president who took bribes where he was paid $5 million because of Hunter Biden's business dealings in Ukraine. And here we are funding Ukraine, giving them billions of dollars to supposedly fight in this war. Now, come on now. Let's put all of this together, guys. Hearing all of this, if you still believe that Russia blew up their own pipeline, their own bridge, their own dam, after all of this, guys, put the pieces of the puzzle together. All roads lead to Joe. Let's go on.
The sources also claim that these $5 million payments to both Bidens were done through various bank accounts so that investigators would not be able to unravel this for at least 10 years.
Which means they knew they were doing something that was wrong. If they're doing it through multiple bank accounts so that you can't track it, they knew that what they were doing is wrong. They knew that shit was illegal. So again, where is the indictment against Joe Biden?
So what does Joe Biden think of all these accusations floating about?
Congresswoman Nancy Mace says there's damning evidence in the FBI file that you sold out the country. Do you have a response to the congressional Republicans?
Where's the money? I'm joking.
Mr. President,
it's a bunch of malarkey.
Mr. President.
That's how you respond? Oh, boy.
This all comes back to the fact that James Comer had issued a subpoena to the FBI to hand over the alleged document, which he has now reviewed himself after the Bureau allowed him and Democratic ranking member Jamie Raskin to see it in a closed meeting. There had been back and forth over whether this document even existed, but the FBI have said its existence is not disproven and that it has been used in an ongoing investigation. The FBI have also been attempting to protect their informant's safety, who is considered a highly credible and trusted source for over 10 years. The Bureau refused to hand over the physical copy to the House Oversight Committee to review for themselves.
If the FBI is saying that it has been a highly credible, confidential, and trusted source for over 10 years, that tells me it was probably somebody on the inside. It was probably someone who was already on the inside.
This prompted James Comer to threaten initiating contempt proceedings against FBI Director Christopher Wray for failing to hand over the document so all members of the committee could see it. That's despite the fact that Comer and Raskin were allowed, just the two of them, to see it in the closed meeting. Comer has now scrapped plans to hold Mr. Wray in contempt after the FBI said the Bureau would allow all members of the House Oversight Committee to review the document, which according to CNN will begin today. South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace has now reviewed the document and said it was worse than has been reported so far. She told Fox News Digital that it showed damning evidence the sitting president of the United States sold out his country in an ongoing bribery scheme. Now, earlier in the week, it was just James Comer and Jamie Raskin who had seen the FD 1023 document, but they both came out of the meeting with separate stories about what it revealed. Because Democratic ranking member Jamie Raskin said there was an assessment into this document at the time alleging a crime by Joe Biden, but there wasn't any evidence necessary to require further probing. The statement read, "In August 2020, that assessment was closed after a determination was made that there was no more investigative steps to be taken and the evidence collected did not meet FBI's standards for an opening of a preliminary or full-scale investigation."
Oh, August 2020, how convenient. How convenient they would say there was no reason to have a full-scale investigation.
Namely, that the assessment had not developed an articulable factual basis to reasonably indicate a crime may have occurred. The FBI read an excerpt from the memorandum closing this assessment, which was signed off on by Mr. Brady and high-ranking officials in the Trump Justice Department. But Bill Barr, who was the Attorney General at the time and was named by Jamie Raskin in his statement, has poked holes in the congressman's recollection of events. He has claimed that Jamie Raskin is confused. The case was not closed. The assessment of evidence was sent off to Delaware to be further investigated. Bill Barr said at the time this was considered more of a screening of information, which resulted in the development of this controversial FD 1023 form. This information, which was provided by the confidential human source, was checked out and determined it was not likely to have been disinformation, and so it was then handed off to the ongoing investigation into the Biden family, which has been operating out of Delaware since 2018. So why now, in 2023, are we hearing about this FD 1023 form if it's apparently being used in an ongoing federal investigation?
This is dating all the way back to 2020. Most of us just heard about it this year. That magical little year.
Nearly 5 years later, there's no public updates on the FBI probe.
Now, I understand a lot of Republicans are very frustrated because that investigation in Delaware has been going on for 4.5 years.
This guy isn't trustworthy either.
It was going on for 2 years under me, and now another 2.5 years. And, you know, a lot of damage is being done to the country and to the department because of the silence and the failure to reach a decision. I think it's time to fish or cut bait and find out what actually happened in that investigation.
With speculation floating about that Joe Biden was involved in a criminal bribery scheme with Ukraine, it does cast further doubt over his narrative that he has never spoken to his son Hunter about his business deals. But nearly 5 years into the investigation into the Biden family, there seems to be no outcome so far. Joe Biden, however, claims that he has never influenced the decisions of the Department of Justice.
You notice I have never once, not one single time, suggested to the Justice Department what they should do or not do relative to bringing a charge or not bringing a charge.
Yeah. So I'm just going to say it does not look good. It does not look good. And I say this because let's keep it real. If there wasn't this war right now with Russia and Ukraine, maybe it could be a little bit easier for people to kind of overlook this. But considering what is happening right now with Russia and Ukraine, and considering the U.S. shelling out billions of dollars to Ukraine, and considering that the U.S. chose to escalate this war and not de-escalate this war, it's not a good look for Joe Biden. Fox Business actually discussed this in reference to the House Oversight Committee. You got to hear what they have to say about this.
Let's welcome back Newsweek opinion editor Batya Ungar-Sargon. Batya, the big story of the day is that members of House Oversight read that FBI document from an FBI confidential informant. The FBI has used this person for at least 10 years. They're now talking about two separate $5 million payments, one to Joe Biden, one to Hunter Biden. There's no proof that they got the money, but there's also evidence that there was major use of off-balance sheet shell companies to bury the cash drops from overseas. What do you think of the story?
So it doesn't look good. it looks bad. I want to know more for sure. But I have to tell you, Liz, you know, I've been working on this book about the American working class. I've been traveling the country for the last year, interviewing Republican and Democrat working class Americans. And I got to tell you, when the word Ukraine comes up, it's not in this context. It's in the context of, why are we sending billions of dollars there when we have so many problems here? And Liz, I hear this from...
Duh. She had to go travel the country to meet working class people to hear that rhetoric because she's writing a book. This is the funny part about this. If it wasn't for her writing this book, I'm writing a book about working class people. So I traveled across the country to talk to working class people. And I found out they really want to know, why are we giving billions of dollars to Ukraine? What? You had to go to... Jeez. Oh.
Republican working class voters all the time, hardworking Americans who can't afford the American dream anymore. And so I would just urge people who are spending a lot of energy on this to keep in mind who your voter base is, because they have real problems right now. And they agree with you about this. They agree with you about the woke issue, but they're...
It's like she just found this out. It's like you don't know any working class people. Like, I'm really confused. I don't understand this. Guess what? They are really done. It's like she just found this out yesterday. It's really weird.
Their kitchen table issues are really hurting.
Yeah, we're just reporting on the issues. I mean,
for.
but we understand you're in touch with the middle class, working class voter. And, you know, when they see stuff like this going on, I mean, you're right. The voter polls show they don't like the direction of the country. 7 out of 10 say we're heading in the wrong direction. They don't like what this White House has been doing. That's like 6 out of 10. We're talking Gallup, Quinnipiac, Monmouth, Emerson polls. You know, but when you see the behaviorally, so the White House is trying to shut this down. But Batya, we got to stay on the story. And the story is this. The pattern is this, that the Biden family game plan was cash in on Vice President Biden's job, earn millions in consulting fees, set up dozens of shell companies to bury the cash drops of from overseas. We're tracking $4.6 million that went to Hunter Biden shell companies.
And that's just the amount that they were able to track. 4.6 million. Like, you see what I mean? Like, this money went somewhere. Look, guys, they show the wire transfers. So when Joe Biden made that comment, where's the money? It's right there. Some of it's right there. I mean, to me, it's like, oh my God.
And his law firm for consulting services out of Ukraine's Burisma. And there's talk of a $5 million bribery involving this, and then Vice President Biden. The working class America and middle America do not like seeing stories like this at all.
Absolutely. And I'll take it even further. The injustice of the difference between how the media treats Joe Biden and the way they treated President Trump, that bothers people a lot, right? I mean, can you even imagine if a Republican had done this, you wouldn't have the media essentially covering for them the way the liberal media is covering for Joe Biden right now. So I totally agree with you on that.
What bothers them the most?
The fact that the American dream is so far out of reach for the hardest working Americans.
Why don't you just ask that question to those working class people? This is something I don't really understand about corporate media. And some independent media will do this too. It's like they'll bring on a journalist who's writing a book who traveled across the country to interview working class people to understand how working class people feel, instead of just leaving your desk and going out on the street, hitting the pavement and talking to working class people. The old school way of doing it. Actually talking to those people yourself and not taking the word of someone who's writing a book who's never been working class. I never understood these things. It's really weird, really strange to me.
All right, so you got then the Biden family is being accused by House Oversight GOP lawmakers, Senators Chuck Grassley, Senator Ron Johnson. You know, they're saying that basically Joe Biden was not going to be the presidential nominee in 2016. Last year and a half of his vice presidency's like, okay, we'll just go in and just try to make some money for the family. I mean, that's the psychology that the House GOP lawmakers are claiming is at play here. Final word.
It's very hard to disagree with that. It really looks like that happened. And the more evidence that comes out seems to only confirm that. So, I mean, you know, I think they're right.
Notice that Batya, she didn't really say much about the actual investigation and claims, you know, that are happening. She didn't say much about that. She turned the topic to like what she's writing her book about, because, you know, she's trying to find a way to defend in some way, shape, or form the Democratic Party. That's what I think. That's what I believe, bud. All righty. Eric, I think we can switch to the second screen for Type V and C, and I'll go to these comments. Deneen says, we have to go to Australian news to learn what's happening with Biden. I know I was like looking, I was searching for like videos and I was like, wow, not much on this. Robert says, unbridled corruption. Where is the justice? Johnny says the law does not apply to the club. Deneen says Trump is the distraction to take our eyes off this. Ooh, could be. Dwayne, I wonder why Brandon is so defensive. And thank you for the super chat, Roger. How many Black working class hoods she spoken? Roger Meadows, I always gotta like commend you for keeping it real, Roger. Keeping it real. Okay, and speaking of keeping it really real, they are finally starting to admit, that's mainstream media, liberal media, and conservative media, that RFK Jr. could actually be a big threat, a bigger threat than they were willing to admit at the point in time when he announced his candidacy. And the reason why they are afraid is because they are starting to notice something I pointed out from day one when I covered his announcement on the ground, is that he has found a way to garner support, not just from people who are Democrats, but also independents and some Republicans. And that is scary. That's scary to the Democratic Party that he's running through. And apparently it's also scary to some people from the Republican Party, and that includes the RNC chair. Now, shout out to K-Steady QB for this clip, always doing the thing, talking with the RNC chair. And if she is afraid of RFK Jr. getting Republican and independent votes, check this out.
I want you to look at a New York Times headline. I usually don't look at New York Times headlines, but this one struck me. Robert Kennedy Jr. with Musk pushes right-wing ideas and information. Now, I got to tell you, it's rich that the New York Times, that was pushing all kinds of misinformation on the pandemic, on Hunter's laptop, not to mention the Russian hoax, is calling out others on misinformation. But some Republicans, like even our own Greg Gutfeld, says he might change parties or at least vote Democrat in the primaries just to vote for RFK. Watch this.
I warned you guys about this. I told you guys that some people who are conservative have contacted me and have told me this exact same statement.
I can't believe how much I like this person because I never could stand the Kennedys, but I might have to switch my party just so I could vote for him in the primary, because I honestly do think he is a serious breath of fresh air.
So RFK could get a lot of Republicans, a lot of independents. Who scares you more to run against, Biden or RFK Jr.?
Oh, I think Biden has a machine behind him. I mean, they're just going to hide him in the basement, right, and run out the machine. And he'll have so much.
Sometimes
so much
machines
money
lose. Look at Donald Trump in 2016.
Yeah, this is the New York Times trying to downplay RFK because they know how weak Biden is. I mean, this is what they're doing. They're trying to say, oh, he's like a Republican, to try and make sure Democrats don't vote for him, because this is what they're doing to protect the weakest president with very low unapproval, who's changed the whole primary calendar, who's not going to debate because he's so unpopular, even his own party doesn't want him. So the New York Times is doing Biden a favor with that article. I'm not worried about running against either of them. I think Republicans are going to have the right candidate. We're going to win the White House.
But it's a very different strategy running against Biden, who represents the far left of the Democratic Party, or running.
You see how they continue to lie and say that Joe Biden is far left when they know damn well Joe Biden is not far left.
Against RFK Jr. Could you switch depending on who is the final contender?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be RFK Jr. It's going to be Biden, and we're prepared.
She didn't want to answer that question because she doesn't want to be seen on national television saying that she might be thinking about voting for a Democrat.
Preparing for that, and let's make sure we beat him, and that's why you've got to go to bankyourvote.com.
So let's talk about this for a second. I have a couple other clips that I want to show as well. RFK Jr., if you've been paying attention, something that I've noticed is that he seems to be appearing more so on the right-wing outlets, right? So he seems to be welcomed on Fox News. He's been on CNN as well. They weren't friendly to him at all. Not the first one anyway. But he came back on again and spoke to Smirkonish. At the same time, mostly what I have seen, it seems like he is either on like a libertarian platform, or he's talking to a libertarian, or he's talking to a conservative outlet. I have yet to see RFK Jr. on left media. And by left media, I don't mean, I don't mean liberal. So not MSNBC, not CNN. Let's not go there. Okay. Let's not go there. He was on Breaking Points, but Breaking Points is not left. We got to remember that now. Breaking Points audience, based on what I've seen, and I didn't think it was going to go this way, but based on what I've seen, their audience is actually more on the conservative side. You have a conservative host and you have a progressive host, but their audience, for the most part, seems to be on the conservative side. All you have to do is just look at the comments. So, haven't really seen him on a left show yet since he has announced. He's been on Jimmy's show, but I haven't seen him on Jimmy's show since he announced. So what I'm saying is the outlets that he is appearing on, there's a certain segment that watches those outlets on the regular. So he's getting that message across to people who are Republicans, some people who are independents. And at the same time, though, he's running through the Democratic Party. So you have people who are Democrats that voted for Joe Biden that doesn't want to vote for Joe Biden again this time around. And they're kind of looking at RFK Jr. like, hey, this is another, option. And what he says is making sense, at least economically. I think a lot of the things that he said in reference to the war and the government agencies, all that stuff, I agree with it. Get rid of the war machine, get rid of imperialism, get rid of all that stuff. I agree with that. Don't agree with him on healthcare. He doesn't seem to have a plan for healthcare. I've talked about that. There's no Medicare for all. There's no universal, no single payer, nothing like that. But he did say that he thinks Medicare for all would be good if it had a public option, but he doesn't have a plan. Like, it's not on his platform. So that's another thing. So there's parts where I agree with him. There's parts where I disagree. Obviously, I disagree with him on Israel and Palestine, the position that he takes on that. But the thing is, based on what I've seen so far, it seems like he is appealing more so to people that may be, I don't know, non-political, like people that don't have a political ideology, people who consider themselves to be independent, some people who are, on the right. There are some lefties that also like RFK Jr., but it doesn't seem to be as many of them as it was that liked Bernie, if that makes sense, right? And I think part of that is because the Medicare for all. That's a big one for people. But he is appealing to different types of people. And that includes Silicon Valley. Now, somewhere along the way, venture capitalists, Silicon Valley, have taken a liking to RFK Jr. One of them is actually David Sachs. Now, David Sachs also has taken a liking to Ro Khanna. So he's hosted fundraiser recently I told you about for Ro Khanna. David just kind of seemed to be all over the place. He's also said on TV, I showed you guys this clip as well, that he is also supporting Ron DeSantis. So David just seems to go where the wind blows. I don't know. But recently, Teddy Schliffer, he tweeted this. I think you guys need to see this. And then I'm going to play a clip actually with Teddy talking about this as well. Venture capitalists and podcasters David Sachs and Chamath are hosting Biden primary challenger RFK Jr. in San Francisco next Thursday, per invite obtained by Puck News. Look at the invite. Similar to Ro Khanna, tickets are $2,000 for the reception, $10,000 for the dinner. And so you can look at the invitation here. Please join co-hosts David and Jacqueline Sachs. And it says, for an evening in support of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in affiliation with Common Sense PAC, Thursday, June 15th, 2023, 6 p.m., San Francisco. They didn't mention the address this time. In the Ro Khanna one, they did. Join us for a cocktail reception. It says address is available upon RSVP with a dinner to follow. Suggested donations, cocktail reception, $2,000 per person, dinner, $10,000 per person, and that's limited availability. Please contact events@saxfamilyllc.com. If I remember correctly, David Sachs, I think, is also another billionaire. He owns Callin, which he sold to Rumble, and he's now on the board of Rumble, right? So this is interesting that people in Silicon Valley have taken a liking to RFK Jr. Now, Teddy goes on to say, I had just reported 2 weeks ago that David Sachs was actively preparing to host a fundraiser for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., but credit to Dan Primack for beating me to the invite. And then there's Puck News right there. And it says, this fundraiser is raising some money for Common Sense PAC, which is apparently some affiliated PAC backing RFK Jr. So what I'm trying to point out to you is that at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if someone is Democrat, Republican when it comes to donors, when it comes to fundraising. Silicon Valley types back all people that they feel may shake their hand later on if they win, may help them out, may do a little something for them. Because all those people are different. Ro Khanna, RFK Jr., and of course, who was the other one I mentioned? Ro Khanna, RFK Jr., and Ron DeSantis. They're all different. Now, Teddy was actually recently, he was on CNBC talking about the donors. And I want to give another shout out to K-Steady QB for this clip. It says, asking why rich Silicon Valley tech donors are backing RFK Jr. when the DNC is blocking him. Listen to this.
Some major Silicon Valley donors have spoken and they are backing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for the 2024 Democratic Party nomination. Your next two guests have done extensive reporting on this. That's Puck News' Teddy Schleifer and Axios' Dan Primack. Dan, start with you. Listen, the Democratic National Committee has basically said there's no plans for debates. There's no plans for a primary. President Biden, as of right now, is your nominee. And, you know, what do they say in Caddyshack? You'll get none and like it. I mean, why are people backing a candidate where the Democratic National Committee has basically said no chance?
There's a couple of reasons. One, the folks who we're talking about here in the Valley are kind of iconoclastic, contrarian sorts of people. So this is kind of what they do. A little part of it is probably to throw a little bit of chaos into the mix here. I mean, one of these people is David Sachs, who is also supporting Ron DeSantis. He said if it was Kennedy versus DeSantis, he'd have a high-class problem. But they're kind of throwing a little bit of monkey wrench into it. And there is a feeling, I think there is a little bit, at least of sincerity, in terms of a belief that Biden maybe might not be up for the job for 4 more years, and a belief that the Democratic Party should have some sort of competitive process, or at least that Biden should have to prove himself before the general.
Let me throw this out, and I don't have any idea how this, I was a political science major, no idea how it works. Is there a chance RFK gets enough momentum that he gets a debate?
I mean, there's certainly a chance, right? I mean, this ultimately comes down to polling. You know, he's, you know, best case scenario is kind of in the low 20s in certain cases, a lot of which is probably name recognition.
I just want to shout something out here for you to see. So RFK Jr. Silicon Valley supporters. So Jack Dorsey, that is actually the former owner of Twitter. So that's who Elon bought Twitter from. David Sachs, as I told you before, owned Callin, moved to Rumbles on the Rumble board. And then Chamath here as well. So these are, those Silicon Valley supporters. And shout out to the person, I didn't start the chat, I'm sorry, but the person who said RFK Jr. is not a threat to capital. I agree. I think that's a big part of the difference, because I don't think that David Sachs or Jack Dorsey or any of these Silicon Valley tech dudes are actually going to back a candidate that is considered to be a threat to capital. They're not going to back a candidate that's saying get rid of the billionaires, right? Or they're saying like, let's make the rich people pay more. They're not going to back someone who is going to actually take money away from them.
And slash, he's the other candidate more than anything else. But look, if he was to start polling very, very well, and maybe was able to get some more mainstream support, particularly from folks inside the Democratic Party, you know, some actual elected officials, not just Silicon Valley tech moguls or VCs, then possibly he could get that. Yeah.
Teddy, I think we have you now. I mean, is this like a throw your vote away thing, or do they really believe there's a shot here?
Well, look, I mean, David Sachs and Peltier are spending much more time, much more energy boosting their actual candidates. You know, Ron DeSantis is the favorite candidate of David Sachs. Sachs is very involved with the DeSantis campaign. Peltier, I've reported, is likely to host a Nikki Haley fundraising event in the coming months. That's where the energy in the party is.
And see, when it comes to the social issues, so if you're thinking about, you know, these individuals and who they're funding, when it comes to the social issues, they don't seem to be backing people that, for the most part, really are focused on a lot of the social issues. Now, I know RFK Jr. said on his announcement, he's like, you know, my family wanted to bring everyone together, and, you know, didn't matter, you know, what race someone was. And I totally get all that. But how far are you willing to go on that? You know, are you willing to go as far as to say, like, is RFK Jr. willing to go as far as to say, oh, yes, you're right, like ADAS should receive reparations? Or is he only willing to go as far as his billionaire donors feel comfortable? And these are the things that you need to look at. I think it's a mistake, and we've been doing it for a bit, but I think it might be a mistake to compare RFK Jr. to Bernie Sanders, because when you really take a look at it, they're really not the same. There's a difference between a grassroots campaign and one that's taking corporate donors. There's a difference between like someone saying Medicare for all and someone saying, well, you know, I don't think it's possible, but I think maybe it should be Medicare for all with a you know, a public option, but there's no plan for it. It's not even mentioned on the platform. They're not the same. And I think it's a mistake for people to call RFK Jr. progressive. Let's stop. I'm hearing people say that. Even when I talked to Dr. West last night, I was like, well, you know, in the squad, they're supporting endorsing Joe Biden. How do you feel about them not endorsing someone like yourself or Marianne, who's running on progressive policies? Notice I didn't say RFK Jr. when I mentioned progressive policies, because he's not running on healthcare or anything like that. He's not running on those things. He said in his announcement that he is a Kennedy Democrat. He's one of those old school Democrats. He never called himself a progressive. Other people did. And for those of us who were there at his announcement, that was something that stood out to me too. I was like, I didn't hear anything about Medicare for All. I was like, he's not progressive. He's still corporate. Now, here's part 2 of this. Thank you again so much for this case study, QB, because that conversation continues.
And that's where the energy in Silicon Valley is. It's behind kind of the, what I call like the backlash to progressivism. And I suppose Robert F. Kennedy is like a sort of a backlash to Bidenism, obviously. But the energy that these two people are going to be spending is on the right. It's going to be in primarying Trump. And, you know, sure, look at some headlines that, you know, these are both people who like to throw monkey wrenches in, as Dan pointed out. But ultimately, this is not where the real presidential elections can be decided. You know, Sachs is going to be very involved in kind of getting money to DeSantis. Chamath will get money to Nikki Haley. The role of Jack Dorsey, you know, I know he was in the image a minute ago. You know, Jack does not weigh in on politics at all. And the fact that he is being so vocal about RFK when, you know, he doesn't say anything about, you know, the Elon's destruction of his company, but on RFK, he'll weigh in.
And that should be a red flag to people. Like when he said that Jack Dorsey doesn't weigh in on politics at all, but now all of a sudden he is weighing in on politics. Why? Let's start asking these questions. Why are all these Silicon Valley tech, you know, dudes, why are they all so willing to be invested in RFK Jr.? Does RFK Jr. have to break up big tech on his platform? I don't think he does. Let's go on.
Look, and Elon and Jack Dorsey, who I don't know if they have a relationship, or maybe they hate each other, maybe like each other, I don't know.
No, they're very close.
Okay, because Elon hosted this thing. That's a lot of reach. If Jack Dorsey and Elon Musk are basically endorsing, and I know Musk hasn't endorsed it, but by hosting the spaces, it's kind of an implicit endorsement, that there is momentum here. And then we look at the polls that show that even a majority of Democrats say, 2 years is a long time from now.
Yeah, I was going to point out, like, I mean, I think, you know, obviously Sachs and Chamath are rich, and, you know, they can put $3,300 into their campaigns or maybe $100K into the super PACs. But really their influence in Silicon Valley, frankly, has more to do with their podcasts and their money. Like the fact that Elon Musk has, you know, 140 million followers, and he's putting RFK into the mainstream media conversation. Like, I think the fundraiser doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. It's really that these VCs and these tech celebrities have sort of become media personalities, frankly.
I disagree with you there, Teddy. The money always matters. The money always matters, and where the money comes from matters. So I have to push back on that. Teddy does some good work, but I'm just saying I have to push back. I got to push back on that. You guys know my whole thing about following the money. And just call it what it is, you know, instead of just saying, oh, you know, these are wealthy people. Just say what it is. They're billionaires. It's okay to say that. I'm here to tell you it's all right to say that. So just follow the money. What's in it for them? Is there an agreement not to push or try to break up big tech? These are the kind of things we need to pay close attention to. Like, it is what it is. RFK Jr. has like some good views on some things, and I've talked about those things as well. And I do think it's interesting that he is polling the way that he is. I told you his turnout was really good on the ground at his announcement. I was surprised to see that many people there. And I do think that Joe Biden should have people like, you know, just trying to tell him to get out the way. Like, seriously, right? I saw another embarrassing video today of Joe Biden. I was going to play it, and I was like, nah, I ain't going to do that. I was like, no, I ain't going to do it this time. But at the same time, we still have to follow the money. Okay? We still have to ask, why are all these people in Silicon Valley getting behind him? And in reference to Elon Musk, yes, Elon Musk did give him the Twitter space. We talked about that. I also noticed that Marianne did say to him, Elon, I would also like to have a Twitter space as well. Are you opening this to all candidates? No reply. So what's happening here? And you don't have to like Marianne. You don't have to agree with Marianne, but how are you going to offer the Twitter space to RFK Jr. and to Ron DeSantis, but Marianne like asking you publicly to do it and just ignoring? What's happening, guys? Are the tech dudes picking the people? Or is this like a Bitcoin tech dude club thing happening? I don't know. I could be wrong, but I will be paying attention to this going forward. But just call them billionaires, Teddy.
Like, I think the fundraiser doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. It's really that these VCs and these tech celebrities have sort of become media personalities, frankly, more so almost like a colleague of any of us than they are just another rich guy with a checkbook. Really, their power is almost as influencers and less as donors.
And that's another thing you need to worry about. Their power is almost as influencers and less as donors. Well, no, I'm going to backtrack that a little bit. If you're donating money, you definitely have some power. So there's power that comes with the donations, especially if you're a billionaire. You're backing these people, you're donating their money or you're backing their campaign. But then you add on top of that because they have these podcasts, like David Sachs has that All In podcast, which is pretty popular based on what I've seen, right? Then you have that on top of it, the influencer factor. So now you're not just a billionaire, but you're a billionaire that's donating money to campaigns. And you have a podcast that people think is pretty cool and they like you. And you are the influencer. So now you have influencers that can influence the people based on the donations that they give to the politicians that they're backing to vote for them. And is this the wave of the future? Is this how things are going to be in the future, where candidates are going to rely more so on influencers to get their message out and to get people to vote for them? Just like those two teenage boys doing those videos for Joe Biden. The ones that were kind of crying saying that they're not being paid by the DNC. Remember those guys? I played that video. That video was funny. But this could be the future, guys. Maybe this is the way that things are going to move going forward. Maybe some of these politicians will be looking towards influencers, people who are just generally likable people and are very familiar with social media and social media platforms, and they know how to work the algorithm. Maybe that is going to be the future of electoral campaigns. But what do I know? What do I know? Anywho, Steven says RFK's real opponent is the DNC. This is true. That's right. Aaron, a great interview for the show would be Natasha Tsukoff, who wrote Choke Points, Global Private Regulation on the Internet. Ooh, I'll have to check that out. Peter says Jack Dorsey supports him because of his support for Bitcoin. I was right. And crypto. Same reason I like RFK. Okay, that explains it then. I was right. I thought maybe DSMS Senster. The tech bros are flexing their powers now. I know, right? You know, a lot of the tech guys were like the nerdy dudes, like in high school, they got picked on and stuff by like the football players and the basketball players and all that shit. And then they grew up, you know, they went to college. They're like, oh, you're going to pick on me. One day I'm going to be somebody. They went to college, started these tech companies. Now they're billionaires. And now the same people who picked on them are like, I'm sorry, man. It was just high school. They peaked in high school. Mastermind Hour. I want to know how Political Girl is voting. Political Girl is funny. Oh, man. She's a trip. I don't know what to say about that one. Oh, boy. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip, Roger. Everyone stop falling for the Venus flytrap. I already see some here cheer for their favorite politician. Enthusiastic behavior has taken hold and coming alive again. Things like we got to coalesce and mobilize behind West RFK to galvanize the movement. Get them elected to do for us what we can already do for self, but let's not do it for self. Let's hope they do it for us. I thought we agreed never to let politicians lead movements, run CBIs. Yeah, you can do both. Not everybody can run. Unfortunately, not everybody can do citizen ballot initiatives. That's the thing. So that's why some people want to invest in a national strategy and some people want to invest in like the local strategy, but we can do both. We can do both. All right. But I hear where you're coming from. Oh man. What Notori? Notori said Chris Hedges just said that he was going to try to set up a meeting with the Green Party and Cornel West. Where? Where did you see this? How do you know? Tell me. Anybody? I heard about that, Notori. How do you guys know this? Well, while you guys figure that out, I just want to shout out one more time the Boston chapter, because I don't want to forget about that. I'll just let you guys know that I said that one more time. I wish there was a way to just easily search through these posts on like Substack, because sometimes, oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah. Hot time, summer in the city. Oh, this one doesn't have the picture. I hate that. I don't want to show that one. I'm sorry, guys. That one doesn't have the picture. The picture makes it cuter. Well, you guys, let me know how you know that. Like, how did you know that about, anyway, I'm trying to find this. Okay. This, RBN chapter thing. Oh, there it is. All right. Okay, guys, just a reminder, tomorrow is the deadline for the Boston RBN chapter to sign that Google form. If you already did it, don't worry about it. But for the people who haven't had a chance to do so, I'll send it out one more time tomorrow morning so I can do that, get this going and make sure I have everyone's names and emails. Again, we need volunteers to expand mutual aid efforts. So this is for the Boston chapter. All the other guys are handling their biz. But anyway, again, we're launching RBN chapters in an effort to expand mutual aid. If you would like to volunteer for the Boston chapter, fill out that Google form, which I'll send it again. This is sent through my newsletter, guys. I'm not going to put this Google form link in the YouTube chat. That's just too much craziness. Like, and we're not doing that. We're not going down that road. But you sign up for my newsletter, you'll receive this as well, because I'm gonna send it again tomorrow morning. And then we are going to do a barbecue, which is going to be our first event, a mutual aid barbecue. It's going to be meet and greet mutual aid. That is hopefully, I plan to have that in late July. So if you fill out the Google form, it's very quick, because I don't know about you guys, but I really don't like a lot of questions with these forms. So it's just very simple. Your email, your name, and then would you like to help with that very first event? Yes, no, maybe. And then how would you like to help in reference to mutual aid once a month, a virtual mutual aid session, financial literacy, self-care, higher ed alternatives? This is the one that I would do. Mental health counseling. If you want to do mental health counseling, I'm sorry, but this is very important. You have to be licensed in the state of Massachusetts. I'm not trying to have the popo come for me. And housing and tenant rights, grow your own food, Marxist theory, and how to start a worker co-op. Or if there's another talent that you like to offer, you can select other, and then you can tell me what other skill you would like to do. And last but not least, would you like to volunteer for food and clothing drives? So that's it. My form is very short and simple, and to the I don't know. I just don't like to have a lot of questions. But yeah, definitely look forward to that. For me, it's a little bit different, guys. I live in a place that has a long winter, so I really like to try to get things going this summer. That way we can get a couple of mutual aid efforts done the summer and the fall, because the reality is, for those of us who live here, we all know once winter comes and it starts snowing, it's kind of hard to get people to come out, right? So yeah, I try to get as much as I can get done like before then. But yeah, did we find out an answer to that question? Case Study shared it. Oh, did he share it on Twitter, Notori? Anybody? Anyone? Bueller? Let me check. Yes. Yes. Okay. Eric, can we find Case? Oh, wait, here he is. Let's see, wait. Okay. Case. Oh, yay! Oh, yeah, because I forgot Chris was there. Holy crap, Case Study QB is tall. Oh my God, I'm not as tall as Case Study QB. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you guys that now. I'm 5'5". Case in this picture looks like, I thought Case Study was short. All this time he was sitting down. I thought he was really short. Okay, so Case Study QB, yeah, because Bribe was there and Chris Hedges was there at the Workers' Strike Back event in New York. Awesome. So he must have talked to him in person. Where's the tweet at, though? Oh, here it is. Breaking news at Workers' Strike Back NYC event. Chris Lynn Hedges said he's working on a meeting with the Green Party and Cornel West in hopes to have him run as a Green. Breaking news, guys. You guys share the news. Share the news. Hold on, I got to text a friend. Oh, I can do that after the show. That's awesome. That's awesome. You know what that means? And I've said this before. You know what that means? Keep scrolling. Oh, now I'm not going to remember okay. Scroll to what? Well, I don't see anything else. You want me to read these comments? Oh, it's a video. Oh, let me come out of this. Where's the video? Oh, it's a video of him saying it. Okay. Yeah, but I don't see a video. These are just pictures. I don't know. I'll try it again. Maybe it's on I don't know, you guys. Marco said keep scrolling. Keep scrolling to what? I don't have anything else to see. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I wish Case Study QB was here in the chat. What do you guys think? Maybe I'll find it later. What's wrong? It was up there. I don't see it up there anymore. Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. All right, I thought it was just me for a minute. I was like, I don't know. I don't have anything else to see. Oh, snap. All right, guys, I do have to head out. It is past my time. But thanks so much for hanging out, guys. Have a good weekend. I'll be back on Sunday. I'll be back live on Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. I got to go. I want to call people now. I got to go. I don't know what that means, Roger. I direct message you. Try that. Let me see. Direct message me what? Oh, it's weird that, oh, okay. These are two different posts. I don't know how you guys can see that, but I don't see that one. I wonder if it was under, Twitter is weird like this, man. Okay, you sent it to me, but I'm not logged in. Oh, let me go over here. For those of you who are new, I apologize. It's usually not like this. Let's see. Oh, weird. That is so strange. It shows up on one place, but not the other place. That is weird. Okay, let me play it. Okay, here we go. Sorry, guys.
But yeah, I share all your concerns, and
whoops, sorry.
Just off the record. I've been playing with my phone because I set up a meeting with Cornell and the Green Party for tomorrow morning because of the issues you just raised.
You would recommend a Green Party run in the alternative, or? I'm
recommending that the Green Party, that Cornell runs as the Green Party candidate.
Yes!
And I think we should pick Shama to run with him.
What did I tell you? I told Cornell West last night, what did I say? I said, if I were you, I would make Chris Hedges the campaign manager. So we'll see. We'll see. So we'll stay tuned with that one. But I don't know. I would put my trust in Chris instead of I gotta go. I gotta go. All right, guys. Have a good weekend. I'll be back on Sunday. Gotta goes. Other than that, have a good night. Keep up the fight.